For centuries they called it the disease of kings. It was this mysterious affliction that would strike with sudden, just excruciating pain. Today we know it as gout. But what exactly is this ancient disease, and what causes this brutal invasion of our joints? Let's dig in. I mean, really, imagine this. You wake up in the middle of the night and your big toe is so swollen, so unbelievably tender, that even the weight of a bedsheet is just agony. What kind of medical mystery could cause such an intense, out-of-nowhere attack? Well, we're about to find out. So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll investigate what happens during one of these sudden attacks. Then we'll unmask the microscopic culprit behind it all and see how the body's own defenses can totally overreact. From there, we'll trace the 4 stages of the disease, uncover its hidden dangers, and finally, take a look at the risks and the overall outlook. All right, our investigation starts right at the scene of the crime, the joint itself. See, the classic presentation of gout isn't some slow building ache. Oh no, it's a sudden, overwhelming assault. And we're not talking about just a little discomfort here. This is a truly debilitating event. The joint gets hot, it turns red, and it's so painful that moving it is almost impossible. And while the big toe is kind of the classic target for a first attack, gout can also strike the ankles, knees, wrists, or even your fingers. So, what's the intruder responsible for all this agony? It's not a bacteria, it's not a virus. To find the answer, we have to look much, much closer. Yep, to solve this mystery, we've got to go microscopic. The real culprits are actually hiding in plain sight, right inside the joint. And there they are. The perpetrators are these long, slender, needle-shaped crystals. They're called monosodium urate, or MSU crystals. These sharp little invaders form right out of the joint's own lubricating fluid and then embed themselves in all the surrounding tissues. So where do these crystals even come from? Well, they form because of a condition called hyperuricemia, which is really just a fancy way of saying there's too much uric acid in the blood. When those levels get too high, the body can't keep it all dissolved, and it starts to crystallize, especially in cooler joints, like the big toe. But here's a really key clue. Having high uric acid is necessary for gout, but it doesn't automatically guarantee an attack. The real trigger is how the body reacts to these crystals. It turns out the crystals themselves aren't actually what cause all that intense pain. The real drama kicks off when the body's immune system discovers these intruders and launches this all-out, scorched earth counterattack. It's a whole chain reaction. So first, the crystals form. Then, the immune system's first responders, they're called macrophages, they try to swallow them. This triggers an internal alarm system, which releases these powerful chemical signals. Think of it like a flare gun going off. That flare calls in a massive army of reinforcements that just flood the joint, releasing even more inflammatory chemicals. And that is what creates the intense swelling, the heat, and the unbelievable pain of a gout attack. But a single attack isn't the whole story. Gout is really a chronic journey, a progressive disease that unfolds over years, and it usually happens in 4 distinct stages. It often starts totally silently. You can have years of high uric acid with absolutely no symptoms. That's stage 1. Then comes stage 2, the first painful attack. Stage 3 is what's called the intercritical period. It's basically the calm between the storms, and it can last for months or even years. But without treatment, the attacks often come back, and that leads to stage 4, chronic gout, where these crystal deposits start causing permanent joint damage. Now, the defining feature of this chronic stage is the formation of something called tophi. You can think of them as these large, solid clumps of urate crystals, all surrounded by inflammatory cells. They're like a permanent battleground right in the joint. They are the long-term physical evidence of the disease, and they can cause some serious damage. And this is what that damage actually looks like. On the left, you can see the physical result. Those white lumps are tophi building up in the joint. And on the right, the microscopic view shows you what's inside, just masses of crystals surrounded by inflammatory cells. Over time, these tophi can literally erode bone and destroy cartilage, which leads to permanent damage to the joint. Now for the twist in our story. The damage from these crystal invaders, well, it's not just confined to the joints. The exact same process can cause serious systemic harm elsewhere in the body. The primary target outside the joints? The kidneys. They're the ones responsible for filtering uric acid out of the blood, which makes them really vulnerable. These same crystals can form deposits right inside the kidney tissue, or even clump together to form painful kidney stones. This condition is known as gouty nephropathy.
This image is pretty striking. It shows a kidney just filled with uric acid stones. And this doesn't just cause pain, it can lead to blockages, infections, and a slow, progressive decline in your kidney function.
And the consequences can be dire. About 20% of people with chronic gout ultimately die of renal failure. That is a sobering statistic that really highlights just how serious this condition can become if it's left unchecked. So who is most at risk for this crystal invasion, and what's the overall outlook? Let's take a moment to profile the condition. Well, several factors definitely increase the odds. Gout is way more common in men over 30, and genetics for sure play a role. But lifestyle is also a major contributor. Heavy alcohol consumption, obesity, and diets rich in certain foods can all raise your uric acid levels. And even some medications, like certain diuretics and even lead toxicity, are known risk factors.
But here is the most important takeaway of all. While the complications can absolutely be severe, the outlook is generally positive. There are effective medications available that can stop an attack in its tracks, prevent future ones, and even lower uric acid levels enough to dissolve existing crystals over time. So with proper management, gout does not have to be a life-limiting disease.
And that leaves us with a final thought. Historically, gout was the disease of kings, right? It was linked to rich diets and royalty. But when you look at today's risk factors, obesity, alcohol, diets high in processed foods, you really have to wonder, is this ancient crystal invader finding a new and fertile ground in our modern world?